We may have probably heard the expression, faith can work wonders, or faith can move mountains. And from our day-to-day life experiences, we probably would have seen that faith is something that gives us something to live for. It makes us feel that something is possible or something can be done. And faith itself makes us do certain things which probably on our own we may not have done, or probably we would have hesitated from doing these things. Faith also includes the aspect of trust and hope. When we have faith in somebody, it means that we trust the other person and we hope that the person will do as we have asked or requested. And in our lives on a day-to-day basis, we see that we have faith in people and also faith in God. And therefore this element of faith is something with which we need to read today's gospel passage, because today's gospel passage deals with two incidents which would not have been possible without faith. We see that the two miracles that took place would not have been possible if the two individuals did not have faith in Jesus. And in a way, faith presupposes that we place our entire trust and hope in that person. But when we read today's gospel passage, one may wonder, why did Jesus address the woman as daughter? And why did he say, "Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well"? How can our faith make us well? Well, let's find that out during today's episode of Tea Time with the Word. But before we can begin our reflection, let us take a look at the readings for Monday in the 14th week of Ordinary Time. Today's first reading is from the prophet Hosea, chapter 2, verses 14 to 16 and 19 to 20. And the Gospel is from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 9, verses 18 to 16. Faith can indeed work miracles. And in today's Gospel passage, we see two miracle episodes. And therefore, Jesus presupposes that every person who comes to him with a request, who comes to him to get cured, that person has to have faith. Therefore, every healing action of Jesus is the result of faith shown by the person. It is faith in God that makes impossible things possible. And for Jesus, he himself believed that a small act of faith is enough to move a mountain. As a result, we see our faith always gets the attention of Jesus. But today we live in a world that tends to place a lot of stress on individuality, that tends to place a lot of stress on we relying on our own merits. And as a result of this, sometimes we fail to see things around us the way they should be seen. Now today we can properly analyze this gospel passage and we can take some things from it that could benefit us and help us live better. First and foremost, we need to take a look at the general context of today's gospel passage. Today's gospel leads us to meditate on two miracles of Jesus. Now, the first one was in favor of a woman who was considered unclean because of an irregular hemorrhage which had lasted for more than 12 years. And the second miracle is in favor of a girl who had just died. In order to understand these miracles properly, we need to take a look at the mentality of the people at that time. Now, according to the mentality during the time of Jesus, the person who touched blood or who touched a corpse or a dead body was considered unclean, and whoever touched that person also became unclean. And therefore, we see that blood and death were factors of exclusion. That is why those two women were marginalized people. They were excluded and they were not allowed to participate in the community, because whoever touched them became unclean, and as a result of it, they themselves could not participate in the community and relate with God. In order to be admitted once again fully into the community and to participate in all the activities, it was necessary for these people to go through a rite of purification, which was prescribed by the norms of the law. Now, by curing the woman who had hemorrhage, Jesus opens a new path towards God. And this path does not depend on any rite of purification that was controlled by the priests. Similarly, in raising the girl from the dead, Jesus conquers the power of death and opens a new horizon to life. And therefore, with these two perspectives, understanding today's gospel passage will be much more easier. And first and foremost, let us take a look at verse 18 to 19, the death of the little girl. We see that when Jesus was still speaking, we are told that an official came to intercede for his daughter who had just died. And how the official pleads with Jesus is very important. He asked Jesus to go to impose his hands on her so that she will live. The official thinks that Jesus has the power to make his daughter rise from the dead. And this thinking itself is a sign of the faith that the girl's father had in Jesus. And therefore, immediately sensing the faith, Jesus rises and goes with him. And along with Jesus, we are also told that the disciples go along with him. This is the starting point of the two miracle episodes that follow in today's gospel. As Jesus was going, we see that he meets a woman who had been having hemorrhages for the last 12 years. And therefore we see that the Gospel of Mark presents both of these episodes, but he gives more details. The official is called Jairus, and he was the president of the synagogue. On the other hand, we are told that the little girl was not dead as yet, and we are also told details that she was 12 years old. But Matthew somehow does not mention these details, because Matthew tries to give a brief version of the narrative and tries to focus more on the aspect of faith. So we come now to the situation of the woman who has had an hemorrhage for the last 12 years. We are told that this particular woman had an hemorrhage and was trying to seek a cure from Jesus. And because of this, she was marginalized and excluded. And she had tried various doctors. In fact, we are told that she had spent her earnings on doctors with the bid of improving her health condition. But nothing could be done. And then when she heard about Jesus, she immediately went up to Jesus and she decided that if I touch the fringe of his cloak, I will be cured. This itself was a very act of faith. Now, the catechism of that time or the teachings of that time would have told, if I touch his clothes, I will still remain impure. But the woman thinks exactly the contrary. This was a sign of courage. It was a sign that women also were not in agreement with everything that the religious authority taught, because the teachings of the Pharisees and the scribes did not succeed in totally controlling the people. And as a result of this, the woman had courage. She got close to Jesus from behind and touched the end of his cloak, and she was cured. Now, the response that Jesus gives is very interesting itself. What does Jesus say? Jesus says, "Courage, my daughter, your faith has saved you." A brief utterance by Jesus which has three very important points. Firstly, in saying "my daughter," we see that Jesus accepts the woman in the new community. Earlier we are told that because of the blood hemorrhage, because of this, she was excluded from participation in the community and considered unclean. By calling her the daughter, Jesus welcomes her back into the community. Next, we see that what she expected and what she believed takes place. And this gives her a great amount of happiness because she was no longer excluded. And this proves that the teachings of the religious authority was not correct. It also proved that Jesus had opened a new path which gave people the possibility to encounter God on a more easier basis. And finally, Jesus recognized the faith of the woman, because without the faith of the woman would not have been healed. It was only because of her faith and courage that she was cured. And finally, Jesus goes to the house of the official, and there are many people. There are the flute players and those who are mourning. And what does Jesus tell them? Jesus tells them to go out because he says the girl was only sleeping. The people laughed at him because they thought that he did not know how to distinguish whether somebody is asleep or dead. And death during those times was a barrier which separated people from God. It was something that nobody could transcend or go beyond. And therefore, the laughter that the people had, it is said that they ridiculed Jesus because they believed that nothing was possible for God. And the situation of the communities at that time of Matthew seemed to be in this situation of death. In a way, they were in a kind of a slumber. And therefore, by this, Matthew tries to revive them. And then the resurrection of the little girl. We see that Jesus emphasized that faith indeed was everything. However, in today's world, we see that faith is threatened by various factors. Our faith gets weakened by each little wave of ill experience. Our work and actions are the evidence of our faith. And therefore, when we count God's blessings, when we look at the graces the Lord has bestowed on us, we can truly be grateful and we can truly believe in the fact that for God, nothing is impossible. And as we reflect on today's readings, let us ask for the grace that we too may have the same faith like the official and like the woman with hemorrhage, so that we too may place our entire faith, hope and trust in Jesus and allow Jesus to lead the way for us. Amen.